Okay, let me get this straight. We've got long-term rentals, we've got short-term rentals, and now I'm hearing people talk about midterm rentals. There are so many options in real estate that I swear could give me a headache, but today I'm here to talk about the pros and cons of each of those options for you to decide what strategy works best for you and your family while you change your life through real estate, so stick around. Okay, so the first place we're gonna start is by defining each one of these because we gotta know what we're talking about to move forward. Let's start with the short-term rental or the vacation rental because that's the town that I live in, a very tourist town that has a lot of vacation rentals here. So what is a short-term rental? Okay, a short-term rental, if you have ever gone on vacation somewhere and you've paid to stay at a place for a week or so, at the beach, in the mountains, whatever, that is a short-term rental, that's a vacation rental. Anywhere that you stay for a short period of time to visit a town, that is a short-term rental. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, a long-term rental, if you've ever rented an apartment, if you've ever rented a house for a long time, that is a long-term rental. That is somebody's home. A lot of times it doesn't come furnished, sometimes it does, but a lot of times it doesn't come furnished. You're gonna maintain it as if it's your own property. You've got legal rights as a tenant. That is going to be a long-term rental. Now, when we're talking about a midterm rental, we're talking the middle of both of those scenarios. So a midterm rental can lean towards both sides, but a lot of times a midterm rental is going to be someone like a traveling nurse. A lot of times is a midterm tenant. Corporate employees who are staying somewhere for a shorter time than a full tenancy, that's a midterm tenant. So you as an investor, you know what each one of these things are, but why would you pick one over the other? Why would I buy a midterm rental versus a long-term rental? What's the difference? So let's dive into the pros and cons of each of these to give you an idea of which one might be best for you and your family. So the first one we'll start with is our vacation rentals or our short-term rentals, the pros, okay? The first pro is you can make a lot more money using a short-term rental than you can a mid or a long-term rental because I have significantly more stays, I can charge more money per night, I can bring more guests in and out more frequently, and therefore I can charge a premium for what I have, so I can make a lot more money. The second pro is that guests are not there for very long. Believe it or not, some guests do not respect your property. So if you get a bad guest or a bad experience, they're not gonna be there for long, or if they're really bad, you can go through the proper channels to have them kicked out of the property early if necessary. Hopefully I don't wish that on you, but it does happen. People just don't care about your property the same way they do, especially when they're on vacation. So the pro is that if you have a bad tenant or a bad guest, you can get them out relatively easily. Okay, so what are the cons of a short-term rental? Well, the first con is that it is significantly more hands-on to manage a short-term rental than it is a medium-term or a long-term. You have to be interacting with guests all the time. You're sending messages back and forth if you don't have them automated. You're dealing with damage claims. You're dealing with the cleaning crew. Like there's a lot more. It is a business. It's running as a business. You're bringing people in, you're sending people out, you're resetting, refitting. It is a business, okay? So it's a lot more hands-on than a long-term or a medium-term. Now, another con to a short-term rental is that you do have much higher expenses, okay? You as the owner, you're going to be responsible for paying those utilities because you can't really pass that cost off to your guests. So you're gonna be in charge for the monthly mortgage, you're gonna be in charge for all the utility bills, and trust me, if you've ever been on vacation, you're the one that leaves the sliding glass door all the way open with the AC on 58. I've done it before, I'm guilty as well, but people just don't think about your utilities like it's their own home. So you're paying all those utility bills, you're gonna pay for maintenance and any defects. If somebody breaks something, you can go through the proper channels to have them repair it and pay for it if you need to. But a lot of times you're footing bills like that. You gotta pay the cleaning staff. Your expenses are much higher with a short-term rental than some of the other options. Now, a bonus con to a short-term rental, and probably the most important, is that short-term rentals are volatile to market conditions and seasonality. So that means that a short-term rental can change in terms of how much money you make based on what time of year it is and what kind of market we're in. So if you've been paying attention to Airbnb the last couple years, there's been a big Airbnb boom post-COVID as people are back out exploring the world. So Airbnb went through the roof in terms of the cost per night, the income they're making, things like that. Now things have gotten back a little bit more to equilibrium. People aren't traveling as much, and a lot of those big beefed up numbers, those income numbers from before, are not what they were that's not the same today. So a lot of times you could end up with some volatility. Your income is not guaranteed. It can fluctuate. And if you're in a vacation market like we are here, you get a lot more money in the summertime than you do in the winter time. So you have to make sure you're allocating your money appropriately to cover some of your slower months versus your peak months. Now, a long-term rental. So what's the difference in a long-term rental? Well, one of the pros of the long-term is that you do have much more stable income. I've got a lease agreement. I have a written legal contract from my tenant that says they're gonna pay me X amount of rent on the first of every month for however long their contract is for. So I know that I'm going to get that money for that amount of time. If they don't pay, I can evict them. I have rights just like they do, but I know there's guaranteed income for that length of time. Another pro to the long-term rental is it is significantly more hands-off than a short-term rental. So you as a landlord, if you pick a great tenant and you've got a great house that doesn't have a bunch of repairs and issues, you can sit back collecting a check every month and have to do almost nothing. You might get the occasional call for a repair or an issue that you might deal with, but a lot of times you will sit back getting that rent check, paying that mortgage without any issues month after month. Okay, so a long-term rental sounds pretty good. Why would I not choose that option every time? Well, there are some cons to it as well. You're not going to make as much money, number one, as you would on a short-term rental. With a long-term rental, you're having to appeal to people who are living there full-time. This is their home. So you have to have an affordable product that they can keep up with month after month. And if you're asking too much for rent, it's not gonna work out. So you have to ask a decent amount for rent, something that goes along with the market. And a lot of times there's not gonna be a giant spread on that. So you're not gonna make as much money. The second con is that if you don't do your due diligence up front and you get a bad tenant, or you just bad luck, it was no fault of your own, you get a bad tenant, the process to get them out can be super lengthy, can be very painful and costly. Going through litigation, going through the courts to get someone evicted can be a major pain, and they could destroy your property. So that is a con of the long term, is that you got to be aware that you do have to go through the processes to get a bad tenant out, because they have rights just like you do. Okay, so now our interesting category, the midterm rental. So what are some of the pros to the midterm rental? Well, you can make more money that is more consistent, is number one for the midterm rental. I can have an increased income that is also more consistent because I can charge more per night or per month because it's a midterm rental, but I also know they're gonna be there for longer than a week. So for example, when we had an Airbnb, I had a traveling nurse reach out to us and ask if she could rent the property for 2 months. So I would take what the nightly rate is for the property per night, it's about $155 a night, multiply that times the number of days. So if 30 days a month, $155 a night would give me X amount of income or rent for that month based on the nightly rate. And then I would take that, and for a midterm rental, I would knock off a 25% discount for someone to stay for an entire month. Now that's still a great deal for me because they're still paying a premium to stay in my property for that period of time, but I give them a discount because they're giving me some more consistent income that I don't normally have. So I knock off 25%. But that midterm rental, that's consistent income for 2 months. I now know that 2 months out of my year are guaranteed income, and I know I'm gonna make a profit, so there's a huge pro to the midterm. The other pro to the midterm rental is that there are less expenses and less turnover. So I'm not cleaning once a week, then I'm paying my cleaner every week and adding to my expenses. I don't have more people coming in and out using my utilities and damaging the property. I'm not having to switch through people constantly. It's usually 1 or 2 people from the midterm, traveling nurses, construction crews, things like that. It might be more, but usually it's only a couple people. They're probably not gonna destroy the house, hopefully. They're not going to use as much utilities because they are living there on a more consistent basis, and you're going to have significantly less turnover because they're not switching every week. So that reduces your expenses quite a bit. You're still going to have some, but you're not paying as much as you would in a short term. Okay, well, it sounds like the midterm rental is the best of both worlds. Why would I not choose that every time? Well, there's some cons as well. The first one being you're looking for a niche client, okay? I can find a lot of tenants for long terms. I can find people who want to stay for short terms if my property presents itself well enough. But when I'm looking for traveling nurses, I'm looking for construction crews. A lot of times they're harder to find. So you may have some gaps where you don't have anybody for a month or two, and then you get somebody for 3, 4, 6 months, okay? So just be prepared that there is some fluctuation in that as well. You're looking for a niche client, so you may not always be able to fill those gaps. Another con is that longer bookings sometimes can interfere with other opportunities. So you may have a client that wants to stay for a month starting on the 1st, and you book that client, cool, I've got income for a month. But then on the 15th, you've got someone who wants to stay starting then for 4 months. Well, you can't start them because you've already got someone in the property. So when you have these longer term stays, it might interfere with other people that are better opportunities, but that's just part of the game. You got to balance it out. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. That's just something to keep in mind. Okay, so I know what each one of these options are, and I know what the pros and cons of each of them are, and I've decided which one I want to go for, which one works best for me and my family. So now, I've got all these options. Does that change what type of property I buy to either use it for a long-term, short, or mid-term rental? No, you can use almost any property for almost any rental strategy as long as the local laws and regulations allow for it. Some neighborhoods don't allow short terms. Some don't allow midterms. A lot of neighborhoods around here have a 6-month rental minimum or a 12-month rental minimum. So you have to understand what the local regulations are to determine if you can use the strategy you want or not. Now, a bonus tip, when you're looking at purchasing any of these strategies or properties, approach it in such a way that you can mix and match if you need to. If you decide that you want to be a short-term rental owner, a vacation rental owner, purchase a property that also will work as a long-term rental in the event your short-term doesn't pan out the way that you wanted it to. You need that backup plan so that you don't have the short-term rental not performing the way that you want, and then you're stuck and you're trying to sell it, but you can't sell it because it's not performing well or people don't want it. You don't want to end up in that situation. So have it as a backup plan where I can take it. If it's not working in short term, I put a tenant in there long term. I'm not making as much money, but I'm still making a little bit. Same thing with a medium term. If I want to go midterm rental, I can do that in the winter time, and then I can do short term during the summertime. So I'm mixing and matching both, so I'm covering all my bases. I rent to vacationers in the summer, I cut that timeline off when the fall hits, and I rent to only snowbirds in the winter. And I try to keep my calendar full all year long. So if you got any questions, you like this content, please subscribe below. We bring you videos twice per week, every week, on all things communities in Panama City Beach, Florida and the Emerald Coast, and investment strategies like this to try to bring you the most valuable possible. We interview local experts. We see the best places around here. I'm giving you absolutely the best content in real estate on the Emerald Coast that I possibly can. I want to be that resource for you, so please subscribe. If you like this information or you want more info about any of these strategies, comment the word more below and I will reach out to you to make sure I get all of those questions answered. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about each one of these strategies? Have you tried one and it didn't work? Have you tried the other? Is there a reason you hate one of these options? Let us know in the comments. Let's get a discussion going. I've got my opinions, but everybody's different and I want to hear yours. That's all I've got for today. I really appreciate your time. You can go ahead and stick around and watch one of our other videos that we've created just to give you the most information we can about this area. I look forward to talking to you soon. Thanks for watching.